Hi, I'm Jim Huffman, and welcome to the Shopify Growth Show, where we dive into what's actually working to scale Shopify brands. Hey, running an e-commerce store is tough, but you don't have to do it alone. Each episode, I talk to founders who've grown from idea to 7 or 8 figures, plus experts who share what's driving real results. And we're in the game too. My Shopify growth agency, GrowthHit, acquired its own brand, Neat Apparel, and we're pulling back the curtain to show what's really working as we scale the business. Want the latest Shopify tactics and insights delivered straight to your inbox? Subscribe to the Shopify Growth Insider by GrowthHit. Every week, we break down 5 top growth tactics for Shopify and brands. Find the link in episode notes below, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. Well, I'm excited. I've got Jesse from Gateway here. I've been following his stuff, his content for a while, so I'm excited to get into it. So Jesse, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure, Jim.
Yeah. So we're just going to cut to, I read a thing whenever you interview somebody, start with the question you want answered first. So we're just going to go with that. And I do want to get to your story and your narrative because it's really impressive, but you're coming out with content around this concept of bootstrap giants. And like, you know how people have trigger words, like good or bad, like bootstrap business owner is always a trigger word for me in a good way where I'm like, I'm sold. Like that name alone, I'm super jealous. I love kind of oxymorons, opposing things. So well done there. But let's just like come off the top rope. Like, what does a bootstrap business even mean? Because some people are like, oh, does that mean self-funded or it's like grows organically? Like, how do you define a bootstrap business versus like, what are even the other options for starting a business?
Yeah. Well, let's jump into bootstrap giants, as a thing. I think where it came from for me is the typical narrative. Like I see it, the most common narrative out there is there's 2 options if you want to start a business. The first is, I think the most well-worn, at least for people kind of from my background, which is, hey, go start a venture-funded business. And, you can raise money, you can raise seed money, pre-seed money. The pre-seed is 500K at a 5 million, and then you get to the 15, and it's this like worn path, and there's people who will do your decks for you. And it's this like, it's almost like you take the kids who went to college. I went to an Ivy League college, and then you went into consulting and then investment banking, and then probably and it's almost like the same steps in VC. And I'm not trying to be super negative on it. I think it's a very well-worn path. And by the way, and we can talk about this. I think it's right for lots of types of businesses and lots of types of bets that people are making. So I think it can be the right option for a lot. But that's one narrative that's very well-worn. The other narrative is like the 4-hour work week narrative, which is, hey, I'm going to like a lifestyle business. I'm going to make some money and I'm going to do what I want. And there's also there's books written, literally there's a book written, right, called 4-Hour Work Week. And then I think there's this other category that frankly, I think most businesses in history have been, and I think a lot of businesses are, which is, hey, I'm building a business off my own profits. I want to be in charge. I don't necessarily want to sign up for a board. I want to be the person running the company, making the decisions, driving it. I want to be able to control my destiny and be the owner. But I'm as ambitious as anyone else. I want it to be a huge business. I want it to make lots of money. I want it to be really amazing and change an industry and all those things. And I think that is what I sort of defined as a bootstrap giant. And I think the thing I observed was there are not as many materials, conversations, content out there for the founder who's on that path. And so that's sort of what the unserved market, if you will, in the case of bootstrap giants that I'm trying to build around, which is, hey, I think there's this, and look, there's a lot of the principles. Some of my favorite content on the internet is Paul Graham's letters. So there's a lot in the Venn diagram of how to start a company and grow it. There's a lot of stuff that's the same no matter what, regardless of how you're financed, right? But I think there's a lot of nuances to bootstrapping a business. So that's kind of the concept of bootstrap giants. What is bootstrapping? Look, I don't know. I'm sure there's a million definitions. You could go with a very extreme binary definition, which is, look, I never raised a dime of outside money from a single person. I think that's probably the most obvious extreme answer. I just never raised any money from anyone. I started myself and I just kept going. There's this really funny book I read the other day about the famous banana man. Have you heard this story?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Wait, did you listen to the Founder podcast? I feel like that's when I was heard about it, but that
No, someone just told me to read it, and the guy starts the business. I won't go to the whole story. It's a great book. I can't remember what it's called, but it's something about the famous banana guys who but this guy, he goes to the docks of Louisiana, and he basically, in the banana business, if you get a shipment of bananas and any of them are ripe, they have to throw them off of the shipment because every banana has the same genetic makeup. They're all clones of each other. So if one gets ripe, the rest of them get ripe really fast. Well, if a bunch of bananas get ripe while in shipping, they all go bad. They all go bad essentially by the time they're on the retail. So they would land in the docks in Louisiana, and anything that was yellow, they'd go around and throw it off. They'd throw it away. They'd throw the yellow banana away. So this guy goes, that's free. Those bananas are free. I'm going to go get those bananas. So he just starts taking those bananas, and he just goes within a 30-mile radius of the dock and sells them at a huge discount. And this guy just ends up, becoming, and then from that, the book basically chronicles how he starts at that to literally taking over the banana industry. Like 20 years later, he buys out the company that was doing, who he originally got. So that's like a fun way to think of true bootstrapping is like, man, you had nothing and you just hustled your dollar from dollar one. I think like I personally would probably include anything in the like low single digit millions raised, whether from friends and family or even sometimes from angels. Maybe the anti-definition is like, I think the second you take institutional capital from a venture firm, you can't really be bootstrapped anymore. And the reason for that is, most often than not, you have to get on the venture treadmill, which means as soon as you raise your seed, you got to raise your A, and then you have to hit certain metrics. And if you're not on those tracks, you're not on track to be a unicorn, which, so on and so forth, means that there's obviously exceptions to these rules, but that's kind of how I think about what bootstrapping is.
Yeah, to keep your members only bootstrap jacket, no institutional funding is like the line in the sand. I like that. I like the example of the banana man because it kind of parallels with Nathan Barry has this article of ConvertKit CEO, this idea of like ladders of wealth creation and laddering up, like
Right.
using your profits to grow your business or to fund the next one, kind of stair stepping. And I think you've done that really well, from like an agency model to a SaaS model to an e-commerce model. And as we get into those two, I'm going to talk about that because I'm impressed you could bootstrap those, because a lot of those, when you have to buy inventory or you have to invest in building a tech product, those can be very capital intensive, where in some cases being bootstrapped could be a disadvantage as opposed to an advantage. And maybe I'm wrong in that, but like, and feel free to give your thoughts on that. But I'd love to hear like this kind of recipe where someone's listening to this, like, all right, sold, bootstrap, own 100%, let's go. Where do you even start? Like what are your unfair advantage you should be playing in? Because I think a lot of people want to bootstrap, but then they hit a wall where it doesn't work. So I think I threw 5 questions at you. So feel free to pick them.
Well,
choose your own adventure.
You mentioned before we started recording, like I just put this email course out. It's the first one I've ever done. And I'm curious what it's going to do. I have no idea. Right. But it's a question that I get asked a lot. What you asked, which is like, well, if I want to bootstrap, where do I start? And, I sort of put together my answer to this question. And I think the first question that I always throw at everyone is like, what do you actually want? And, I made this mistake. I think a lot of entrepreneurs make this mistake. Like the question you always ask yourself when you're starting a business is, or the thing you're trying to avoid is, how do I not fail? I can't fail. I can't fail. I can't fail. Like it's just like this super scary, nobody wants to go back and tail between their legs and go get the job. Like the concept, I remember the fear of feeling like, oh my God, what if I have to go to business school because my venture failed? I'm going to have to admit that failed. Like it's a very vulnerable position. I think that's the thing we don't talk about enough in entrepreneurship, is how personally vulnerable it is and how courageous it really is. And so like when I meet a new entrepreneur, the first thing I say to them is, I acknowledge how courageous you are. What you're doing takes a lot of courage. And I think it's worth even pausing there for a moment. It's like, man, why don't we say that to each other as often as like, I think we'd like to hear it. I'd still like to hear it from my friends and my wife and my kids. Like, man, you're doing something courageous,
Yeah.
But anyway, so you end up spending a lot of time on, I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail. But the question a lot of people don't ask themselves is, well, what if I succeed? What do I actually want? And I kind of paint the picture as like, again, across these 3 different sort of genres is, well, if you're successful in a venture model, You probably own 7 to 20% of your company, or 7 to 15% of your company. You've raised multiple rounds. You have a board. You likely don't control your company. Your company's probably worth $1 billion if you're successful, or some huge number like that. But you're managing a board every day. You're dealing with these huge growth targets. You can't necessarily make decisions independently if you want to make them. And you're one bad step away from some gray-haired person coming in to run the company. And I'm being a little provocative on purpose, but you probably did something that changed an industry, changed the world. It's big. That's a cool path to be on. And by the way, I think VCs teach young entrepreneurs how to build businesses almost better than anyone. Like, they really know how to do it. Again, the other path is you're a 4-hour work week. Like, is that what you want? Do you just want to like chill and run in a bunch of Airbnb rentals and like go vacation a lot? Great. That's another path. Or do you want to like build something that you're excited to walk in every day? You're the boss, you're in charge, you make the final calls. You grow your team at the pace you want to, you make these decisions. Like, and like most founders, when I'm talking to them and they haven't started anything, they just think of the question as too indulgent. They're just like, what do you mean? I can't think of that. And I go, well, just think a little bit about it, because even if if you don't want to be, if you're just trying to build a successful business that's say worth $20 million or $50 million, but you get to call the shots, you're driving it, it's your choice, it's your decision, you don't have to ask anyone to do anything. Like, you probably shouldn't raise an institutional round of capital. Like, that's probably not the right thing to do. Right. So that's my first, if you want to bootstrap, first get clear with yourself as to what you actually want. And just indulge yourself for that little period of, let's assume you'll be successful in 3 years. What do you actually want?
Yeah. Can we go down that path for a second? I'll use like my own situation, because I think it's easy to like start a company, grow up and to the right. I'm a success in the eyes of others. But when you break it down, it's like, what's the reality of your day to day? Because that's where the real joy comes from. Because like with our own like growth marketing agency, you know how it is. You have to wear different hats, and I see hats that I like putting on, hats I don't like putting on, hats I'm good at, hats I am not good at. And like right now, I'm very much head of sales. That's the one thing I haven't fired myself from, which I have such a love-hate with it. Like, sometimes I'm like, I'm talking to founders, this is awesome, it's energizing. Other times I'm like, if I have to go through our deck one more time, like my eyes are gonna bleed. You know what I mean? It's like, I just can't. And
you're like a Broadway actor, every night you get on and sing Alexander Hamilton, and like you got to sing with the exact same amount of drama and
like
enthusiasm.
I think I get dumber as I go through it, and I see like a buddy who's an entrepreneur that's like fired him from himself from sales, and he's like tinkering and building and creating, and I just look over the fence with envy, like, oh, because I've kind of figured like what I want is these things that bring me energy, and I love working in growth and like new idea and that 0 to 1. So I don't know if to answer that question, is there like an exercise people can do? Do I have to go on a retreat and drink some kombucha? Like, what are we doing here?
I'm sure there are retreats for it. I think, well, it's funny you say that, because I share that same experience. I like it more, I think, than you did. Like, I like selling, I like telling stories, I like kind of people like sitting back and listening to me and enjoying it. So I maybe don't have the love-hate, I had just the love. But the joke at Ampush was, we would do this. We'd have like roasts every year, and we'd have people, as an open floor plan. So the whole company at one point could literally say word for word my pitch. Like, hey, I'm Jesse. I grew up and I was an entrepreneur. I worked on Wall Street, and then I did, someone told me to look at digital marketing. So there's this hilarious joke internally that Ampush that everyone could tell the story, because I literally told it so often. Because the other thing you didn't mention is, even, as founder, you're doing sales, you're also doing recruiting, and it's kind of the same thing. You're selling someone, every minute. But anyway, so, there's one of my favorite books is called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. I'm not involved with the company, but I very much am an evangelist for it. And, I think they borrowed this from another book called The Big Leap, which I'm a big fan of. But there's this thing called Zone of Genius. And, the setup for it is, you have your zone of incompetence, right? So for me, that's like, I don't know, cooking or laundry. Like, I'm not very good at it. I could probably do it, but I'm not very good at it. There's zone of competence. Like, I think I'm a decent driver. I'm okay at walking and running. Like, I'm competent at those things, right?
Yeah.
And then zone of excellence. Like, I'm pretty good with spreadsheets. I'm pretty good with PowerPoint. Like, I'm excellent at those things. I could whip them out, And then there's zone of genius. And what differentiates genius from excellence is not only is it something that you're really, really good at, but it's something that gives you energy. It energizes you to do it.
Mm.
And most of us get stuck in our zone of excellence. So you may be stuck in a thing that you're really good at. You're really good at sales, but it doesn't actually bring you energy. And that's kind of one of the things that really a lot of founders who burn out. And I spent a ton of time. A big part of my mission is making entrepreneurship sustainable and really being able to coach the CEOs that I'm co-founders with to enjoy this journey, to actually make it a fun journey, not kind of the journey that most people describe. And look, I think your first company when you're young, it's really hard to do any of this stuff. But I think as you age and as you get older, a lot of people kind of figure some of this stuff out with or without the frameworks. They figure out kind of what works for them. And I think so zone of genius is this thing of like, no, it's the things that you could just do endlessly. They genuinely don't feel like work. And like, the best example I always give of this, like Warren Buffett, like the guy loves investing. It's just so obvious. He likes looking at the companies. He likes reading about them. He likes thinking about it. He likes talking about it. Like it clearly energizes him. Like if, when Joe Paterno got fired from Penn State, poor guy died within a year. Well, he had no purpose. His genius was gone, right? It makes sense. And I bet you if for some reason Buffett couldn't invest, within a year he would be dead. Because that's how much this thing it energizes him to that degree that he's still alive because of it, I would argue, right? So Zone of Genius, there's exercises you can do on their website. There's one called like the energy audit where you kind of see what gives you energy, what takes away your energy. There's a lot of times, here's another weird thing about genius. It's like a fish telling a fish they're a good swimmer. How the hell do they know? It's
right. Yeah. It's like, what is water? Right.
Exactly. And so like for me, part of the reason I started building a public persona, people said, Jesse, you're a good talker. You're a good synthesizer. And I'm like, oh, am I better than that? Than most people? Like I didn't appreciate that about myself. And so there's another exercise they have where you ask some of the people closest to you who've worked for a long time, like, what are the things I do that seem effortless to you that are like, but for you, they'd be really hard. So because you're trying to actually identify what your zones of genius are and what kind of naturally oozes from your being. Right. And so I think it's cool that we got here because one of the reasons I started Gateway X, like I was running Ampush for 10 years, is that I dialed in my zone of genius quite a bit. And I realized like the things I do for fun is like I spot opportunities in the world and I like want to, put together the right team or the right approach. Like I love that I get tons of energy from not sure if this is possible. Let's go try some things to figure out whether it can be a thing. Right. So that's one. The other one that I just do very naturally is I'm very naturally like a coach and teacher of people. Like anyone who ever worked with me knows like you'll get some feedback, you'll get my perspective, but you'll get a lot of like, hey, here's a way we could be better next time. And here's a thing to think about. And here's a book to read. And I'm constantly teaching and coaching those around me. I don't even know I'm doing it. It's just something very, very natural. My mom's a teacher. It's very natural to me. And then, I love building relationships with people. Like I love, in your seat and my old seat at Ampush, gosh, I got to know so many people and it was so rewarding. And it felt effortless to me to get to know someone and it energized me in a very meaningful way. And so I started with those three things when I thought about Gateway X. And I said, what's a job that's going to let me do those three things all the time? And, being a venture capitalist had some of those boxes checked, but not all of them. And starting a single company, I felt like I would have ended up back in the same place. And so as I started building what Gateway X would be, the venture studio kind of meets holding company, it was based on my desire to spend 75-80%. That's the framework says try to spend 75-80% of your time in your zone of genius. You're never going to spend all of your time in it, obviously, right? But if you could spend 75-80%, you'll be sustained. You'll be able to constantly sort of have more energy to work. So I'm obviously like pretty devout around the concept of that. And as the companies get beyond a certain stage inside of Gateway X, especially after they find product market fit and they're scaling, I really encourage the CEOs to start to find their zones of genius and hire around the things that are not, that are in their zones of excellence and competence. Because otherwise what happens is, we had Growth Assistant, it was, let's say 3 or 4 million. Now it's over 10 million. And Adrienne, she's burning out. Like she has certain days where she's like, gosh, I don't want to be here today. And as a founder, that feeling. I know that feeling. It's not a great feeling. And so to actually make these things sustainable, it's really important that she or anyone in that seat finds their zone of genius and then really has the discipline to stay inside of it and to not veer too far from it. And it's super hard as a founder because the narrative is you got to take care of everything. You're the person, the buck stops with you. And so it's a real hard transition to go through. It's been a hard transition even for me in this framework because I'm not running any of the businesses. And like, that's kind of a scary place to be sometimes.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions on that. One, just note, I'm gonna put on the show notes of the book. I haven't read it, the one you mentioned around the 50 Commits to Conscious Leadership. I did the Working Genius framework. I'm in this like entrepreneurship group, EO, and we did that. And that really helped me. But I think you're really smart. You mentioned 75%. If someone's listening, it's like understand what your genius is and how do you structure your work, your day to where you're doing over 50% of your time in that, ideally 75%. That's amazing. So that's the question, like, how the heck have you pulled this off to have multiple companies with people running it to focus on that zone of genius? Because you're doing something really hard, which is you're going from 0 to 1 with a lot of these ideas, as opposed to buying something that's already working and cash flowing, where when you're going from 0 to 1, you have to be so tenacious. There's so much like roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty type of work. How do you not get sucked into the spiral of the day-to-day with those?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, look, I wish I could say that I haven't. I think the first year or two I was, I mean, and I think what I also realized was it wasn't successful. Like it wasn't, we've learned a ton through this journey, right? And I think the number one thing we've learned through the journey is the company doesn't start until there's the CEO and co-founder in place. And we only learned that the hard way. There was 2 companies we started without a CEO for either of them. And I kind of half CDO'd, half sort of, didn't do anything. And both of them ended up kind of going through their own really, really challenging, both of them effectively have shut down and pivoted into new ideas since then with someone who actually acted as as the real CEO for the company. And so, I think there's like so many layers to this. I think the hardest thing on a spiritual level, honestly, and I think it's worth starting there because most of the time I believe when you're not doing something you say you want to do, it's because you're actually afraid. There's some part of you that's not willing to do it. And that's why, right? Because we say all these things all the time. And there's some part of us that's afraid that isn't. And I think it's really, really scary to commit to your zone of genius because it means inherently not doing all these other things. And so on a spiritual level, it's, my coach has helped me kicking and screaming, be like, dude, trust your zone of genius. Like trust that if you spend your time in it, you're so much more energized. You're so much more powerful that it's going to end up actually creating the thing you're saying you want. And it's going to do that. And I think in the beginning, I didn't do it. Like I've gone through this journey. We're at, I guess, 2 years in, or maybe almost 2.5 years in. And, in the beginning, I didn't do it. I was all over the place. I was jumping in 1 minute. The next one I was jumping out. Didn't have CEOs running the companies. I was like, we'll figure this out. I just signed up to run one of the companies as the CEO for a while, realized that's not what I want. So I went through a lot of trials and tribulations now to get to a point where I'm like, I am not going to run any of the one companies. The CEO ultimately has to make a lot of the final decisions. I'm going to be there, to help get the idea off the ground like a co-founder would. I'm going to be there kind of as like the, board member owner strategy, helping drive certain things. I'm going to give a bunch of resources to these companies, but like they may not work out and that may be okay. And I have to like make my peace with that. But I'd say a lot of it started at this kind of really willing to commit. And I think what I kind of inched my way there. Like as I saw my commitment to it, like I saw things be successful and I was like, ooh, that's interesting. Like I could almost break the areas. I started a few companies and the ones where I had like honored my zone of genius, they were doing better than the ones where I hadn't honored it actually.
Yeah. So, but how do you pull that off? Because like, got it. Let me hire the CEO to run it beforehand. But I have a couple questions. It's like, do you need to validate the concept and the idea first? Or you already feel that it's validated? Or two, like having the capital to fund an A+ CEO when maybe the company isn't generating revenue to fund it. Because as we're going this bootstrap path, I guess with Gateway, you then have the funds from other cash flowing businesses or reserves to pull in there.
Kind of, yeah. So the way it works, where we've gotten to, and I wouldn't say we started this way, right? But where we've gotten to is, The best analogy I can give is like when you do IVF, and they make a baby, like not the normal, like not the old school way. They inseminate an egg and then they freeze it at 6 days old, right? And some of the eggs don't make it to the 6 days. Even after some make it to the 6 days, they have genetic defects. They go away, and so like they come back to you after this process and they go, look, there's like 4 viable things, and they're called blastocysts, and they literally are these like fertilized eggs that are 6 days old that then in order to turn into babies, potentially they have to go into a uterus and grow into being a child. And obviously they couldn't, they wouldn't. So I would say we get the business ideas to like the blastocyst level, which is like we don't necessarily fully validate them. We do a little bit. We see the opportunity, we spot it, we have a list of a bunch of them. And when we're engaging with someone who wants to be a CEO and co-founder, we kind of like show them all the things. Well, here's an idea. Why don't you pick one or two and together let's go validate it. And normally like I have a big enough network and a big enough platform that I can kind of validate anything within our space, in our world, right? So I'm like, well, I can get the phone calls. I can talk to all these people, right? Like that's not a problem, but I need someone to go do the phone calls, take the notes, let's go talk about it. And that process is kind of the initial dating phase of wanting to become co-founders with someone. But that person has to really take the idea and go like, well, I heard this and I think we need to do this because of it. And I think this is the right path. And I might say, well, what about, let's go talk to other people. But I'm not going, no, you're wrong. Here's what you should do instead. You don't get it. I'm listening. I'm reacting. I'm like, if you've launched enough companies, organically that like ideas evolve, like they turn into things over time. And so, but it can't be mine. If it's my idea, if it's my thing, it's going to be trouble. Like because ultimately the person living it day in and day out, they have to believe it has, it's their idea. And then I think the other thing is like, how do you source, the right types of people to be CEOs and co-founders? That's the hardest part of the business by far, right? And I think what I offer is I come in at least for the first year, really the entire time, but really for the first year plus, and I behave like a co-founder and a partner to these people. And most of them have never started their own companies as a founder CEO. We've got some who they haven't had success doing that, I should say. Like we've got a couple who started their own companies, they didn't work out. Obviously, those people are eager to learn. They're super humble, and they're willing to work with me and most of the time it's amazing for them because they go, oh my God, I got a teacher. I got someone who every week I can talk to and they can help me. And I meet the people where they are. I'm not stringing them out. Right. So I meet them where they are. Another one of the CEOs, she was a very successful CEO, but she'd never started her own company. So she felt more comfortable in a framework where she had this. Another person was just a brand new co-founder and CEO. She'd never done any of this before. So there are people who want to learn and want to be doing it in hand with someone like me. And I think that has to be the case, because if someone who thinks they can do it on their own or doesn't need me, I'm the first person to go, well, if you don't think you need me, good luck. I'm like, love another entrepreneur in the world, but like, then we shouldn't work together. Like it isn't, you have to believe a few things before it's going to make sense. And then from there, we start to kind of vet an idea together. And then assuming we find that they're there, we launch the idea. But oftentimes during that process, I'll give you an example. Like we launched this really cool business. I don't talk about it much publicly, but it's a tech-enabled kind of advisory and consulting business where private equity firms are the clients, and we're helping them assess digital marketing capabilities of their company. So imagine you're going to buy a business.
That's such a good idea, because we've done a little bit of that, but that's a really good idea.
Yeah, if you've done it, it's hard and it's weird. And like even at Ampush, I got asked, we also kind of hobbied a little bit. And I said, look, one of my friends calls me, they're about to buy a $500 million company, just like you're about to buy a house. They go, can you go do a home inspection on this, Jesse? And no one does it. So we run account audits on steroids. We give them all these information and data. I'm like, look, this is how good they are at this. And, the CEO, Casey, she has a deep digital marketing background. She was a CEO for many years. She'd never started something. But her and I actually started, the first idea that she picked off the list was what I call Lambda School for Growth Marketing, right? So it's this idea of like, let's go train people how to be growth marketers, and let's charge the companies or charge the people part of their salary and do the school for free and make it outcome based. And like her and I we got so excited about this. We started validating it. And then through that process, I think she started hearing a lot from companies who were private equity backed who seemed to want more of this help. But she also reflected on her own kind of zones of genius and the things she got excited about. And she's like, I'm not that excited about teaching all these random people growth marketing. I'm much more excited about helping a private equity firm and investigating the companies and doing diligence for them. And so that was another idea on the list. And she's like, let's do that one instead. And so, it sort of evolved, and now we've launched it and it's live and it's off to the races. But it's definitely, it's an art much more than a science. And I think we'll never get so big. Like, I don't see myself doing more than 2 of these a year, and I don't think I could, and still the value prop be the same for that person. Because if I'm not around, if I'm not actually helping them learn how to launch the business, why should they do it? There's probably other person.
Yeah, I think the big value add is having you and another person in the trenches, someone there that's been there, done that. I love the point on you having a list, but letting someone kind of go through it with you to find something that's their own. Because if it's yours, they're not going to have that ownership. It's just a different level of intensity and speed probably that they're going to be operating at. I think that's really interesting. So I want to, as far as like these bootstrap giants, like you've done the service-based business, you've done the SaaS business, you've done the direct-to-consumer, like sell a product, have inventory.
Yeah.
My assumption is service is the easiest to start because you don't have to actually buy inventory or have a piece of technology. You and I could go on LinkedIn right now and be like, we have a service business for X, Y, and Z. Like with Growth Assistant, you've grown that to 8 figures. Could you kind of walk through what's this playbook for pulling this off? Because I'm happy to talk through my growing pains and the different walls I've run into as I hit these milestones, but I'm interested to see how you've broken through and done that.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, by the end of this podcast, you're probably gonna be a customer of Growth Assistant, I bet.
Oh, here we go.
And that's part of it.
Is this a sales pitch? Oh crap! It's a sales pitch.
Well, the funny thing is the second email that's coming in the series that I put together talks a lot about unfair advantage, right?
Yeah.
And the way that I visualize unfair advantage is a bunch of basically unique Venn diagram circles, and at some plate they all overlap. And then the middle of that is something that really you are one of the best people in the world to go start it, right? And Growth Assistant, I had this massive network of people working at brands who I knew. Half my former employees were running growth at some D2C brand, right? Mm-hmm. So I had this big network. I had a lot of knowledge for how to offshore things because we had done that at Ampush. I knew the roles, I knew the things people would do. And I kind of had a brand, a burgeoning brand in growth marketing. So I had there's all these, and then you bring Adrienne in, who's the CEO, and she had a big background in HR and recruiting and had built big recruiting systems. So you just start looking at all the concentric circles and you go, oh, wow, how many of these kinds of things exist? Where all these things are kind of the stars have aligned in this way. And I would argue we use unfair advantage as more fodder to start the business than even markets and ideas. That stuff, there's plenty of big markets with unserved needs. There's a million ideas out there. There's not that many unfair advantages we have. So we use that as a starting point. So that business, the first 30 customers were literally former employees of mine.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so, they all got on the phone with me, not all of them bought from me, but a lot of them bought from us. Right. And then, we happen to also be we're are you having trouble finding people? Are you annoyed with doing the rote tasks? In your case, are you having people turn over at the agency because they're sick of sitting in the innards of Facebook? Oh, well, we have amazing people offshore. They're trained in how to do this, and we can set them up for you. And they're, $2,500 a month, right? Everyone says yes to that pitch. Right now, then we have to go deliver the great person. That's the hard part of the business. And the supply side there's a whole thing we can discuss around that. But the demand side, we felt unlike Ampush, by the way, which we can talk about. Ampush, I felt I was lost the whole time, or at least for the first 5-6 years, I was just lost. I had no idea what I was doing. I was learning new things every day. And with Growth Assistant, I felt oh my gosh, I'm playing craps and the dice are weighted. I know when I roll, I'm going to get certain numbers more often. And it just felt really different because I had these unfair advantages.
And can we talk about the difference between those? Because I think a lot of people listening also are doing service-based business. And tell me if this categorization is right. I put Growth Assistant in the category of a productized service where it's like repeatable, scalable. You pay something, you get this. You're getting amazing offshore talent for like 30% or half of what you would
Right.
pay here in the US. Whereas Ampush, it's like premium agency. Maybe it's more custom, more strategic,
Yeah.
higher retainer, but maybe harder to scale because it could be custom work. Or was it just a paid ad agency? I don't know if I.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it for the most part. I would call Growth Assistant even simpler. It's a staffing business. I mean, it's a staffing
Oh,
or a
okay.
talent marketplace. Like, because
Yeah.
we don't actually get in between the customer and the person, like the Growth Assistant. They're sort of
Mm.
an embedded person onto the team. So for you, we'd say we'll get you two media buying support people, two creative support people, and two admin support or outreach or something.
Where's my salesperson? Can I offshore
There you
sales?
go.
Let's do that.
No,
Yeah.
you can. I mean,
Sales assistant, right?
yeah, I did this thing in Ampush where I would leverage my LinkedIn with someone offshore, and they'd figure out who I was connected to, who we could get introductions for, and it became just a way that we got meetings all the time. And so, yeah, look, that's a little bit more of like a old school staffing BPO type model,
Mm-hmm.
but it's recurring revenue, it's pretty good margins, and it's growing and it's really needed. I think that's the big thing is like there's just a big need, as you know, digital marketing talent is extremely hard to come by.
And to keep,
Um,
yeah.
and to keep, right? So I think that the need for it is the pain point is really, really pronounced. And then Ampush, as you said, was called by many people the McKinsey of growth marketing, right? It was this super
Mm-hmm.
high end. The average deal size was probably $1 to $2 million a year in fees, right? So
Nice.
you're talking about, huge deals. They took us
Mm-hmm.
months, if not years to close. They were, you pull out all the stops as a part of the pitch. Now, what's interesting though is I will tell you, scaling that business and a services business in particular, I think like you have to really enjoy the talent side of the business because the only way you ever scale, and I was lucky enough to work in consulting and then work in financial services early in my career. So I saw these huge, people don't realize that McKinsey is a services business. Goldman
Right?
Sachs
Yeah.
is a services business,
Yeah.
right? So these two, venerated companies, they're big services business. So I got to sit inside the halls of these places and I took away a lot of things. But the number one thing I took away was hire incredible talent and train them and make sure you have a system for how they work that works, that you can repeat it multiple times over. And I used to, at
Mm-hmm.
Ampush in the early days, I would say, we got to build our McDonald's franchise. We got to have sort of these little pods. They have certain types of people. All the people know how to flip the burgers, how to put it in the bag,
Mm-hmm.
and as soon as we were able to do that, that's how, we scaled Ampush in from 3 million in revenue to 24 million in revenue in less than 3 years
Dude, that's
during the
a
heyday.
massive agency, man. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And
Yeah.
and that came from really getting good at recruiting great people and putting them into a system that trained and got them kind of, got those
What,
franchises
yeah,
created.
what's driving the top of funnel there? Because I totally hear you on like some of my best hires. It's like I overpaid for someone because they're a player, and it like more than worked. Talk about like getting the people that are paying those huge retainers. Was it building a reputation? Was it referrals?
Yeah, I
Was
mean that
it
that specific growth took place during we rode the wave. We were in the right place at the right time.
yeah.
And that specific numbers I just gave happened from 2012 to 2015, right?
Oh wow,
So
super early,
we were
amazing.
like our
Yeah.
clients were names like Uber, Dollar Shave Club, Peloton, Birchbox. So we were early, early, early.
Hmm.
And then we'd bring these clients on and they were exploding as companies themselves, right? So we had a bunch of we had the wind way, way behind our backs, but we still needed to be able to recruit, train, and scale. It was a people business. It was a services business. So it wasn't,
Yeah.
we could have easily not had it work out had we not, the demand was there. That was the easy part because we were just so early to being in
Hmm.
Facebook. But yeah, but so it was, but we were very good at the talent side. We were I am and very passionate about talent, about coaching and training. And like, if my people aren't learning, that's a big problem. And I take that super seriously. And I think you kind of have to be in any kind of services business, frankly, any business, but certainly a
Yeah.
services business.
Oh my gosh, it's yeah, people are everything. And talk about the growth with Growth Assistant because obviously, like with the bigger agency, you were able to right away and have a phenomenal team and deliver with Growth Assistant. Yeah, you talk about, I think, in your email, and I'm also obsessed with this idea of have like an amazing offer. It makes the marketing so much easier.
Yeah.
With Growth Assistant, you have that amazing offer, but like, what has worked is you hit different levels or phases of growth because you launch on the back of your network and referrals. But does that get you to 8 figures? Like, what else have you done? And doing that from a bootstrapped approach, because it's always like you want to stay profitable. How much do you dip into the margins or the profit to fuel and fund growth?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, every business I've started, we end up kind of getting lucky on something, and and then figuring out how we got lucky and replicating the luck over and over again, right? And so in the case of Ampush actually started as a lead gen business on paid search. And then about a year or so in, we said, let's try that Facebook thing. And back then Facebook was like desktop, right rail. And we go, oh my God. And like what was a 10% margin in arbitraging for leads on Google was like an 80% margin on Facebook. So then we just said, well, we got to go figure that Facebook thing. And then we became the best in the world at it. Right. And in the case of Growth Assistant, I think there was at least two things. Like we started with my network, then we started doing Twitter threads about the story of Growth Assistant or how to do certain things and we just got so many organic leads that way. And then we've been saying, okay, how do we get be the best in the world at organic content vis-a-vis offshore marketing? We own that category. And that's the one. And the other one was around recruiting. So, we use the digital marketing muscles there. And, we have a TikTok, you could go look it up. It's 50, 60,000 TikTok followers in the Philippines. Yeah. And, it turns out that, by the way, we got kind of lucky with this, but in the Philippines, they're having the same sort of talent issues that the US is having. Like their two options, if you're talent there, have been go and work in the sweatshops for United Airlines or American Express. They have to commute 90 minutes each way. They're not treated like a human being. That's kind of like one option. The other option is go to Upwork and do random project-based work for random American clients. They're kind of jerks. They stiff you in the bill every now. And we basically said, well, you can work from home. We're going to get you internet. We're going to get you a computer, and we're going to make it a great experience for you. And you're going to get to work with these really cool tech companies on a full-time capacity.
Yeah. It's like you're a part of the team. Yeah.
You're a part of their team. You're not, and they all of a sudden we had a big influx of talent. And between that and the digital marketing, we were able to bring in a bunch of unique resumes, which then kind of builds the flywheel, right? Because most of our growth has actually not come from new customers. Most of our growth has come, you're going to go get 2 or 3 growth assistants after this. And in a year, you're going to have 10.
Where's my discount code? Where's the promo code?
I'll get it for you, but you're going to have 10 in a year, right? Because you're going to go, dude, this is awesome. All my employees are happy to have all this work off. Those folks love it. They like being part of an American team. They like being treated like humans. They like getting days off and not just being clocking in and clocking out. And so you'll start with 2 or 3, and then in a year you'll have 10. And so all the growth has actually come from us finding great talent, and then clients going, give me more of that, please. Right. Yeah. Our biggest client started with 2 and has 50 people now with us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because hiring is such a pain. If you have something that solves that problem for you, that's everything. No, man, I love it. And it's funny. I was talking to, I got my entrepreneurship group. He buys companies, and he's like, all I care about is recurring revenue. He's like, that is my number one thing. And that's what I do like about Growth Assistant is the retention component of it, because then the lifetime value is just magical. So we talk about bootstrapping service-based businesses. Let's talk about SaaS or even like a D2C one, because I see where you have the unfair advantage with the D2C company, because you've already run ads for all these D2C companies. Yeah. So with Poopery, it's like, let's, have our own that we grow. And then make sure I pronounce it. Well, and Unbloat, right? Those are the 2 D2C. Am I correct?
Yeah. Pooforia is kind of dead. We sort of turned into Unbloat.
Oh, awesome.
But it was, we can go through them. Like for Unbloat, well, for Pooforia, it was like a funny story where I was like, I just want to see how good I am at running ads. Like I did this for 10 years. I'm going to literally take a commodity product. I'm going to throw it up with a funny, silly brand name, and I'm going to see if I can market it. And
that's the ultimate marketing test, right?
It turns out I'm not that good of a digital marketer because that one just never, quite got the economics working. But what it did do is it got us in front of customers, and we started hearing and listening to them. And they kept saying like bloating. We kept hearing that. Then we started doing some research on it, and we realized that the term bloating is searched more often than erectile dysfunction.
Oh my gosh.
Said like, wow, this is a big category. And so we launched, Unbloat, and I think this has been a test and a subsequent validation of my skills and my learnings And honestly, for most of the last year and a half since we started it, I wasn't sure. I could have easily come to you on this podcast and said, you know what? I thought I was really good at this, but turns out I didn't really know what I was doing. Like maybe all these young people I hired knew what they were doing, but I didn't. But, we were extremely disciplined with our spend and our ROAS. We were amping up testing and performance. And, on the course of a year, we've gone from, call it a 4 or 5 month payback, which is not very exciting, to first order profitable.
Oh, wow.
And so, and it came from what I would describe as the playbook that me and multiple other people at Ampush put together, which was really there's a lot of, I can't share it all now necessarily, but creative testing, different ways to kind of pull lots of creative together, discipline around the financial side of it and not overspending, and so we basically were able to build up. It's now, this month it'll do over 3 million, close to 4 million in sales. It's profitable.
In the month?
No. In on a run rate basis.
Oh, gotcha. So amazing.
350 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 70% gross margin business. And one of the secrets for how we bootstrapped it, by the way, was we got to kind of a really compelling negative cash working cycle. So we were able to get terms, we put a little bit of money, I put $250,000 in each of these businesses just to get them going. Mm-hmm. And so we convinced someone to give us a very low order quantity to start, that took some work, but we sold ourselves, we pitched the dream. And then, we're able to get terms from Facebook and then able to use a company we use Settle, one of these kind of financing businesses. And so the net of all of that is we basically, we have a negative cash working cycle. So we make $100,000 in revenue. We're paying the bill from 3 months ago because we've had all this time to kind of get going on it. So we're actually generating cash in the business and have been since the 6th month in business. So we haven't been profitable as a company, for example, from June of last year to May of this year, let's say, we weren't profitable, but we were still cash flow positive.
Yeah.
Now we're profitable and cash flow positive, but so that's what allowed us with a very, very limited amount of cash to get that thing going and get it off the ground.
That's cool. For people listening, this idea of the cash conversion cycle, there's something genius here if you go to the pricing page, because one, it's a subscription product or it's a recurring revenue product, which is huge. And you save money by paying more money up front for the next 3 months. So you're getting that cash on hand, and then you've got to pay for the inventory. And then and you've delayed that. So that's quite genius, which if you're going down this bootstrap path, that is a must. And so well done there.
It's way more common than you think. The best example most people don't know is Amazon only raised 1 round of venture capital. And you go, how is that possible? It's Amazon. Yeah. You go, they raised 1 round and then they got big. How did they get big? Well, they had negative working capital. You would buy something on Amazon. They'd take a few days to ship it to you, and then they'd pay their suppliers 60 days later. Mm-hmm. And so they had, they'd already had the cash. And so as long as they grew, they generated cash every single month because they were always ahead of last month's sales or 3 months ago sales. And they were able to basically grow their business using the customer's money to kind of fund the growth and operation. So this isn't like a small time, Amazon, the big daddy grew their entire business this way. And there's a bunch of articles about it and charts online. But it's a thing I think a lot more e-commerce entrepreneurs should pay attention to.
Yeah. No, that's really cool, man. That's super inspiring for people to think differently on how they run their business. So you don't have to tap into outside funding or whatever. And then the last one I want to hit on is Kahani. Is that launched or is that in beta with certain people? Because I want it for our clients. I haven't got on the path if it's available in the Shopify store, because so for people listening, you take the stories function that we all see on Instagram or wherever else, and it's allowing you to have that experience on the website. And it could be a magical landing page from a story ad to an experience on the site. Is that an accurate pitch, or what?
You pitched it. You pitched better than I do. Yeah, I mean, look, the insight we had there was the experience on TikTok and Instagram have gotten so immersive, and yet you send someone to this old website that's like a old scrolling kind of text heavy thing. Why aren't you sending them to an experience that is immersive the way that those platforms are? And so we started with the stories functionality. Now we've launched kind of an influencer landing page, micro store experience. And so you can now, to your point, you could go from a whitelisted ad on Facebook, land right onto that same whitelister's micro store, and you can purchase through that experience. And it's sort of
Mm-hmm.
all in vertical media format. And, that one has been tougher. Like, I'll just be totally frank. I mean, I'm sharing a lot. Like, the idea of Kahani, everybody loves, but a busy e-commerce entrepreneur who's got a million things going on, they kind of go, yeah, next month, Jesse, next month.
Yeah.
And what we realized as we grew it was, and the reason we kind of made the second part of the product was, and it's more or less a pivot, we think that's is like Kahani was really cool, but it wasn't solving anybody's problems.
Mm.
Nobody, no one was waking up in the morning
It's
going,
like a
gosh.
nice to have, not a must
Yeah,
have,
exactly.
maybe.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing about product is you really have to not only dial into a very specific use case, but you also have to be solving a very, very important problem.
Mm.
And I'd say like that's one's just been tougher on us. It's been more expensive. We've been able to get enough revenue to kind of keep it moving, keep it sort of bootstrapped, and we're scrappy with how we're building it. But it hasn't sort of seen any kind of meaningful lift around it. And so now we're hoping with this landing page tool, it's a real thing people need. This 30% of brands are spending on whitelisters. The landing experience for today for Instagram and TikTok is broken. It's not a very good or very diverse. Growth marketers want something easy to use to be able to launch this. And so that's what the tool is going to do, is going to make it really easy to launch a bunch of different landing experiences with influencer, persona, like influencer persona around it. What's their favorite product? Them talking to you, kind of being a part of that. And so that's actually launching in the next month here, the new product or the new pivot. And one's been a different experience. It's been a tougher experience.
Yeah. And well, first off, you should be selling through us. We do quite a bit of conversion rate optimization work because it'd be a fun landing. We do a lot of obviously landing page experiments for ad creative that lands on it on the website. So we could be using this in our experiment pipipeline and then
I'm going to connect you with the CEO right after this.
Yeah, pass through the cost there because I do like that. But so I really appreciate your transparency. And by the way, man, like we talk about congratulating each other for being entrepreneurs. Like I love that you're putting shots on goal, right? It's like getting reps and you're honest with the ones that didn't hit, but then you have ones that have hit extremely well, like Growth Assistant, Unbloat. So with both of those, did you put 250K in? And with Kahani, was that the same rule? Like I put 250K in and that's it. And then we we see how it goes. Very cool, man. Well, nice. I want to, I know we're kind of running up on time. I like to end these podcasts with the same question. I didn't prepare you ahead of time, so apologies. Very rude to me. What is the nicest thing anyone's done for you in your professional career? Like when I ask that question, what comes to mind is it could be truly something nice someone did. I've had people answer in kind of a funny, fun way where it's like a tough love situation where like lit a fire under them, but I'd be interested to see your take on that.
Yeah. I've told this story before, but in 2015, we sold a minority stake kind of to a business called Red Ventures in Ampush. And, we had been up and to the right for 5 years and we had, pushed the team pretty hard and we'd finally gotten kind of this first, so it's kind of a mini liquidity event. We sold 20% of the business to them. They came in. And they're operators. I mean, they're business builders, but they had wanted what we were doing in social and wanted to kind of be a part of it. And so they fly our executive team out, with companies 200 people or something. They fly executive team out to Charlotte where they're based. We get dinner with their founder and CEO, who's a friend and mentor. And he's run business for 2-3 decades. Guy, he's very experienced, right? So and he only asks questions. Like he never says anything. He just asks questions. That's all he does. So he just sits at dinner and he kind of goes like, "How's everyone feeling about the deal?" And then he doesn't just say, it's not a small talk question. Then someone goes, "Well, people have been waiting for it for a while to get done." He goes, "Oh, what do you mean?" He goes, Well, the founders, they've been trying to shop this company around for the last 9 months. People are pretty tired." He goes, "Oh, well, what are they tired of?" And 5 questions into it, my whole executive team is venting to this new guy.
Oh my gosh.
Invested in the business. And I'm like, fuck. And I've never taken any outside money. I've never had that situation. And so we go, dinner gets over and I'm like embarrassed. And I'm like, Jesus, what just happened? Like, and he just kind of pulls me aside and he goes, "Hey, like I'm your partner. I'm here to help you. Like I'm going to help you with this. Like I've run business. Like he kind of, he had a moment where he could have been like, oh my God, what did I invest in?
Yeah.
But he really showed up as someone who built a lot of trust with me in that moment of, hey, like I've been there. I understand what we're going through. I can support you and I will support you in solving these problems and kind of working through this. And I think like, I'm not sure I've ever had anyone in that position in my career show up that way. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like, it inspired me to show up more that way. Like it was just a really, really powerful moment for me. And even later, like I remember 9 months later, he called me. He's like, how come you never call me about my business, like, or your business and tell me what's going on? How I can help? I'm like, it's like 2% of your company, dude. Like it is meaningless to me. And he goes,
Yeah.
yes. He goes, yeah, the revenue is meaningless to me, Jesse, but you're not meaningless to me. You're important to
Wow.
me. Right. And I was like, okay, shit. Like that's a very different worldview. Like, and so Rick, just in general, I think that kindness in a professional setting with his money on the line that, that like it left a pretty big impact on me. And it showed me what I could potentially be as a leader to people. And I think it's pretty inspiring for me.
That's a great story. And that's contagious when you like hear things like that. You're like, oh, that's how you operate at that level. That's really impressive. Well, Jesse, this has been a blast, man. Where should we direct people if they want to like follow you? And then as we kind of like as you're launching Bootstrap Giants, like where can they go?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for now, Twitter's great. JS Pujji, and we're going to launch a whole Bootstrap Giants content community. It's going to become a whole big thing that we hope you, Jim, and a bunch of other people are a part of. And then we also think every company is going to get a growth assistant. So go get one.
Looks like I gotta sign up once I get that promo code. And are you gonna launch a podcast? I feel like I saw you, I don't know if it was in your email or somewhere you mentioned a podcast where you're gonna like interview bootstrappers or something. Am I
Yeah.
making this up?
No. I want to launch a podcast also called Bootstrap Giants, where we interview some of the folks who have built these bootstrap companies.
Nice. And are you gonna do like live coaching or how transparent do people have to be?
TBD. We're playing with a couple different formats.
Yeah. Okay. Well, very cool. Well, Jesse, this was a blast, man. Thank you so much for the time. I'm glad we got to connect.
Likewise. Good to see you, Jim.
Thank you for listening to the Shopify Growth Show. If you found this helpful, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It helps other Shopify founders like you find the show. Want more Shopify advice? Sign up to the Shopify Growth Insider newsletter by GrowthIt, where we break down the top 5 growth tactics every week. Remember, you're not in this alone. Building a Shopify brand is a grind, but you got this. Keep testing, keep scaling, and don't run out of larges on Black Friday like I did. Have a good one.